is December 3rd, 2024, and even though it has been nearly a week since Israel and Hezbollah entered into what was described as a ceasefire agreement, Israel is acting like no one told them that they had to stop bombing Lebanon, because that's exactly what they are continuing to do. All this as Israel also continues to bomb Gaza, killing dozens of Palestinians on a near daily basis as the death toll there continues to soar. Oh, and if you listen to Trump, well, he's saying that the death toll is going to soar even more when he gets into office if the remaining hostages that were taken by Hamas are not released before January 20th. So what does he actually mean by that? And what could we be getting into as we look at the end of the Biden administration to the beginning of the upcoming Trump administration? Well, we are going to be getting into all of that here in today's video. But first, just a quick note that I have a new episode of Sanctioned available right now for my paid subscribers, where this week we are doing a deep dive on the history of U.S. foreign policy in Syria. As you've seen, Syria is back in the headlines and has been over the last 2 weeks as you have increased violence there carried out by extremist groups that the U.S. classifies as terrorist organizations, but yet, as we've seen, the U.S., well, the Biden administration is refusing to condemn those attacks. We got into the history of U.S. foreign policy, what was done under the Obama administration that is now being continued as its legacy plays out under the Biden administration. You can catch that episode now, as well as 11 other episodes available for my paid subscribers over on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. You can also find them on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. And both sites allow you to view ad-free videos. So I know that's the comment that I get sometimes on YouTube or Rumble, or people are complaining about the number of ads. I don't have any control over that. So if you sign up to become a paid subscriber, you do get ad-free videos over on those sites. All right, let's get into today's video. So there was a lot of anticipation last week as it was reported that Hezbollah and Israel had come to a deal that notably was brokered by the United States. We'll get into just how we can tell that that is the case here in a minute. But that deal would lead to a ceasefire, at least some form, right, between Israel and Hezbollah. And this is notable because for the last nearly 14 months now, you've had Hezbollah carrying out rocket attacks targeting Israel, targeting a variety of places, notably targeting military and security sites within Israel. And you've had Hezbollah noting that they are carrying out these attacks in defense of the Palestinians, saying, look, Israel, as long as you are carrying out an all-out genocide targeting the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, you are not going to have a day of rest in the north, right? Your economy is going to be impacted. Your people are going to be impacted because of what you are currently doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza. On Israel's end, as it said that it had to have some sort of a response to Hezbollah. Well, that response has continued to really ramp up, especially in recent months, as you've seen Israel targeting heavily populated areas within Lebanon. I mean, we've seen the targeting of hospitals, schools, homes, entire residential complexes just flattened to the ground. And on top of that, Israel also carried out an entire terror attack involving exploding pagers. It's still just insane to me that that happened and then we all just kind of moved on. Like, more people are not talking about that. And I know that, just a few days later, you had Israel carrying out the assassination of Hezbollah Secretary General Syed Hassan Nasrallah with these so-called bunker buster bombs, dozens of 2,000-pound bombs. So obviously that then commanded the news cycle. But still, it's crazy to me to think that within a matter of weeks, you had Israel killing not just hundreds, but thousands of Lebanese people. And yet, all of the world, we just move on from the exploding pagers and everything else. So as a result of Israel's continued attacks, the death toll in Lebanon is near 4,000 confirmed deaths, with over 16,500 people injured since last October and more than 1 million Lebanese have been forced to flee from their homes. And I think it's important to note here that these people do not have anywhere to go. I mean, not only is Lebanon a very small country, not only has Israel been targeting the entirety of the country with attacks spread out all across it. So, for anyone who thinks that they're going to just flee to a different part of Lebanon, that has not been an option. But for many who may consider going over the border to Syria to seek a possible refuge there, that also has not been an option because you also have Israel targeting that border and targeting Syria, claiming that they're just doing it to try to cut off any sort of supply lines that are running from Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And yet at the same time, they are targeting civilians all along the way. So it's no surprise that the civilians of Lebanon would welcome at least some kind of a ceasefire agreement, right? If they see that there's a possibility, an end to these attacks from Israel, or at least a pause of some sort, they are going to welcome it. But even though we were told that there was an agreement, reports noted that Israel unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes across Lebanon since that agreement went into effect, killing at least 11 people on Monday. While the Israeli attacks never really stopped, Hezbollah confirmed it launched 2 rockets towards Israeli-occupied territory, meant as a warning shot that caused no casualties. And I feel like if it were anyone but Israel, the media here in the West may actually take this agreement seriously. But instead, you have them putting out reports like this one coming from the New York Times, which insists that according to their analyst, some violations of the truce and some amount of violence are to be expected and do not necessarily mean the deal will collapse and war will resume anytime soon. I mean, only the West would claim that, it's fine for Israel to continue its attacks on Lebanon, to kill nearly a dozen people, will still act as though this ceasefire agreement is still completely intact. And Israel may claim that it is because there's one very important caveat that they were able to include, a very telltale sign of the fact that the US was the one who helped orchestrate this agreement, which is that Israel is allowed to continue to carry out strikes on Lebanon as long as they claim that they are defensive strikes. Because, as veteran journalist Elijah Meunier noted on X, according to the cessation of hostilities agreement between Lebanon and Israel, the Israelis are not violating it dozens of times a day, but carrying out, quote, defensive actions. The terms of the agreement prevent any military action from the Lebanese side and Israeli offensive action. So Israel can, in fact, continue to carry out attacks on Lebanon by simply claiming that they're defensive in nature. And I guess it would be one thing if this was the only country that Israel was bombing. Oh, but they're not. They're also targeting their other neighbor with an all-out genocide in Gaza. And as we're seeing, not only is Israel continuing to try to starve out the northern half of Gaza, not only are they continuing to kill Palestinians, to target them in gruesome, horrific ways, but they're also continuing to kill dozens of Palestinians on a near daily basis. Israel killed another 37 Palestinians in just 24 hours on Monday, with a report from antiwar.com noting that in at least one of Israel's targeted bombings of homes in northern Gaza, the death toll could not be fully confirmed because medics were unable to recover all of the bodies due to the condition of the site with a large fire breaking out. A reminder that the overall death toll in Gaza from Israel's genocide over the last nearly 14 months is likely much higher than just the 45,000 recorded deaths. And now, if we were to rewind time a little bit, if we were to go back to the week before the US presidential election, and we were to look back at the way that Trump was campaigning at the time when he was specifically trying to court Muslim and Arab American voters, then you may think that this is going to come to an end soon, right? Trump promised peace in the Middle East. Surely he's going to force Netanyahu into some kind of a ceasefire deal for Gaza. Surely Trump is going to see that he does not want to become the next Genocide Joe. He's going to push for a deal. Oh, and then we got the latest post from Trump on Truth Social. Now, as a quick reminder before we get into that post, it's estimated that around 100 of the 250 hostages that were taken by Hamas into the Gaza Strip on October 7th of last year, that around 100 of those remain in Gaza. Israel estimates that about a third of those have died. A lot of different reports on that exact number. I personally am convinced that Israel knows exactly where every single hostage is in Gaza and that they're letting them stay there, refusing any kind of a deal, refusing any kind of operations to target them in large part because they know that they can use this as leverage. I mean, Israel goes in, they bomb all across the Gaza Strip, they kill an entire Palestinian family or dozens of Palestinian families. They get criticized for it. All they have to do is just throw up their hands and say, oh, but there's hostages in Gaza, right? Oh, but we have to think of the hostages. That's what they are able to use as leverage. So I personally think that at the most, they are allowing those hostages there. They know where they are. They just are not targeting them. They're allowing them to stay there. And at the least, they just don't want to make some sort of a deal that would allow the hostages to be freed because they want to continue to use it as leverage. Now, Hamas has offered, they said, hey, we'll return the hostages, but their requirement is that the Israeli military withdraws completely from the Gaza Strip. And we know that Israel doesn't want to do that because it wants to continue to control the Gaza Strip. Long term, it wants to force the Palestinians off of even more of their land. And then Israel wants to continue to expand its settlements in the region. So then that brings us back to Trump. He was elected on this promise that he would bring peace to the Middle East, peace to Europe, right? He would end the war in Ukraine, peace all around. He said he doesn't want wars. He's going to stop wars. Oh, and then if you look at his latest post, it's talking about more and more war. Because as Trump said on Monday, when he took to Truth Social, he declared that if all of the hostages are not released by January 20th, 2025, the day he takes office, then, quote, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. Those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. In all caps, release the hostages now. First of all, if we're going to talk about atrocities against humanity, Israel is literally committing genocide and the US is making it possible. There's literally a pending case right now for genocide against Israel before the International Court of Justice. And on top of that, the International Criminal Court finally got around to issuing an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu for crimes against humanity. And then secondly, I mean, Trump is claiming that, oh, if he gets into office and there are still hostages, that the U.S. is going to hit the Middle East harder than ever before. Well, George W. Bush killed 1 million Iraqis. Barack Obama did God knows how much damage, including dropping over 26,000 bombs on his final year in office. So what exactly is Trump saying that he's going to do? Because none of that sounds like peace to me. And I know he may think that, oh, you throw out these big threats and things are going. No, they're not. Nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to fundamentally change. And when Trump is throwing out threats like that before he's even in office, it is a reminder that this is the man who literally sat there in his acceptance speech and said, there will be no more wars, right? I'm going to end the wars when I'm in office. Certainly doesn't seem like he's doing that from his rhetoric right now. And I would say that someone in Trump's inner circle needs to get in his ear, needs to teach him something about international law and about the tide that is turning around the world as the rest of the world finally figures out that Israel is committing genocide and that they are not just going to stop because they've killed X number of Palestinians or because they've conquered this part of Gaza or that part of Gaza or they've killed so many civilians and left. No, they're not going to stop. They are only going to continue to expand that genocidal war. I would say that someone within Trump's inner circle needed to get in his ear and teach him about the reality of the world right now. But then I look at his inner circle and They're all bought and paid for by AIPAC. I mean, Trump is literally preparing for his second term by enjoying dinner with Netanyahu's wife and son, who say that they can't wait for January 20th. I swear, only Israel would act as if the Biden administration has somehow done them wrong, right? As if they just can't wait for the Trump administration, when in reality, the Biden administration has given them everything that they could ever want and more when it comes to their ongoing genocidal conquest. The only difference about the Trump administration is that it's somehow infinitely more zealous in its support for Israel. It would be amazing if it wasn't so horrific. And I have serious concerns for the Palestinian and the Lebanese and the Iranian and the Syrian and the Iraqi civilians, the list goes on, who stand to be targeted by the Trump administration. That is incoming. But if there's anything that I at least try to keep in mind when looking at this current situation, it's that the more destruction that Israel does to the region, the more it destroys Israel and its standing in the region. I mean, this is not 2016 anymore. The world is a very different place than it was when Trump first took office. And I know that everyone around him is telling him that he needs to throw his full support behind Israel, right? That's where the money is. But I do believe that when he gets into office, he is in for a very serious wake-up call this time around. And that wake-up call is going to be infinitely worse if he keeps threatening the BRICS alliance. I mean, it's like no one has taught this man about the world that he is currently in 2024. It is truly just mind-boggling. And in the meantime, the Biden administration is using its final weeks in office to push the US closer than it ever has been to World War III against Russia, while at the same time claiming that they are finally fostering peace in Lebanon with a deal that allows Israel to keep killing civilians as long as it claims that it's defending itself. And that's something everyone should be talking about. If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive deep dive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also catch Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.